just continue then. So it's my pleasure talking to you. I guess good afternoon for most of you, good morning for some of you, I guess, depending on the time zone. I hope everybody is doing okay. It's clearly this a very stressful time. So I think for all of you, whether you had to travel home unexpectedly or you're still on campus expecting what's to come next. And therefore, we really just appreciate that you've been finding the time to call in here, spend time with us. And this is clearly not the format that we had hoped for, as Marilyn mentioned. We'd hope to just be able to host you on site, show you the campus, but clearly these are very exceptional times. And so we will have to deal with whatever we've been dealt with and trying to just make the best out of it. So we apologize as well for, in terms of getting some more information to you, just relatively short notice, but the Cornell campus really just shut down in the last few days. So we've been working almost just around the clock to make sure that we have the virtual open house website ready for you, have schedules ready for you. And so please bear with us. If we run into technical difficulties or anything, just be patient. I think we're all learning and we're all in this together and figuring it out. I'd also like to thank our current students who, despite this really stressful times, many of them really just yesterday was the last day in the lab where they're all busy shutting down experiments, just still were willing now just to take the time today to serve on student panels, talk to you, since we really think that our graduate student community, I think our students, that is, I think, really one of our biggest strengths, and I think you'll hear more from them in the afternoon as well. And then lastly, just wanted to thank Belinda and Kathy, who are really just the other people who've done all of the work here just to make this possible. I should point out, we'll be recording all of these sessions, so if there's anything you miss, or in the afternoon or tomorrow, we have some sessions that are in parallel. So if you miss any of those, if you have to leave at any point today, we will post the recordings on the website later in the coming days. So then you can always go back and look at the videos there as well. And overall, I'd encourage you, take advantage of the website. It has the schedule, it has the Zoom links, and we will be adding more features to it in the coming days as well. With that, let me see if I can get the PowerPoint presentation up here just to introduce the program to you. Let's see, can everybody see the slides? Good. So I think we've already shown you a brief overview. I think the two key people you'll be interacting with a lot over the coming days and weeks, and then if you come here, hopefully even more, so it's me. I'm the Director of Graduate Studies. I'm also just a faculty member in the BME department, as well as the Weil Institute for Cell Molecular Biology. And you can just call me Jan. It's just, I think, very informal. And then there's Belinda Floyd, our field assistant, I think, who many of you have met already, at least virtually. And she really is, we often call this the mother of all graduate students. So I think she's the one who's really just taking care of everybody, making sure that any questions get answered, anything that pops up, Belinda will be there to help you with it. And that's true whether it's now during the virtual open house, during recruitment phase, or if you're here. So let me give you just a brief overview. So the department, we just celebrated our 15th anniversary. And so hopefully some of you may have received already. Otherwise, I think in your mail, you'll hopefully find a nice surprise in the coming days. So we wanted to give at least a small physical gift or token to you. So that's in the mail. I guess I'll wait till you receive it, but we want to have at least a little bit of physical parts from Cornell. One important feature is that we're still growing. So we added an undergraduate major in 2015. So we just graduated our first 2 classes of undergraduate students. And with that, there's a substantial growth in the department. So we currently have about 20 full-time faculty or 23 faculty, but it's also expected to grow further in the coming years. So there'll be even more research areas and faculty added to it. What's a really important part to consider, though, that when you're considering PhD research opportunities, you not only have these 23 departmental faculty to choose from, but you have all of the Cornell graduate field faculty to choose from. And so those are more than 66 faculty labs where you can perform research in. And so that's really an important distinction that When you applied to Cornell, you did not apply to the BME department, but you applied to the BME graduate faculty field, and which really means that any of those labs can serve as your home for your research. You don't need to have a co-supervisor who's in the BME department, but any faculty member who's in the graduate field can serve as your advisor. And that really gives you tremendous flexibility. And I should point out, it's very easy for faculty to join additional graduate fields. And so our number of faculty in the BME graduate field is increasing by 2 or 3 faculty every single year. And so often it happens that a student comes across a lab here at Cornell that they're really excited about. That lab may not be part of BME yet, but then if we feel, oh, this is really a good fit for BME, then it's a relatively smooth process to get that faculty member into the BME field as well, and further extend the opportunities that you have available. So when you look at the BME website, just to look for faculty, just make sure that you do also not only look at the faculty itself, it will show the departmental faculty, but click on this field on an area that says graduate field faculty so that you really get a much broader overview of all of the available labs. The other thing is that in addition to all of the labs here in Ithaca on the Cornell main campus, we do have several graduate field members who are at the medical school. And every year we have typically 1 or 2 students who end up joining at the medical school. So it's Weill Cornell Medicine in New York City. We have a campus-to-campus bus that's running 3 times a day in both directions. But the way it usually happens for students who join one of the labs in New York City is that they spend the first year here in Ithaca on campus. This way they take engineering class that may not be offered in New York City, and they take some of their required first year classes, and then in the summer after the first year they go to New York City for the immersion term, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. And then after the immersion term they stay in New York City, work in a lab there. Then they might come here maybe once a year to meet with the thesis committee meeting or for their defense, but otherwise I'll spend the time in New York City. And so that's something that we routinely do. That's something that we're further expanding as well. So if that's something you're interested in considering, let us know, and as a know that that option is available. In addition, I think almost all labs in the BME department have active collaborations with labs at the medical school as well. So which ranges from going there maybe once a semester to once a month or more frequently. We have also 3 new faculty members which we just hired. 2 of them will be starting this summer, so they'll be here when you'd be arriving in the fall. So this is Xiaoyi Zhang. He was at the University of Washington, and he's our now inaugural Bob Langer chair. And so he brings the lab that works on biomaterials, drug delivery, and he should be listed now on the faculty website. So if that's an area that you may not have been aware of it, but particularly when you applied when you applied to Cornell, he was not listed on the website yet. So just be aware that you have additional opportunities. Then Carl Lewis is an assistant professor, so he'll be starting a new lab working on musculoskeletal mechanobiology, starting again this summer. And then Nate Sira is also a new assistant professor. He will be starting his lab in January, working on systems biology, microfabrication. And he, even though he's only starting in January, he's also looking into taking students as well. And so that's something, if you're interested in his lab, in discussion with him, you could see whether there's opportunities to already spend some time with him earlier, to meet with him, and how to learn more about his lab before he arrives on campus. Any questions so far? Good, so I'll just continue with the overview. So the current overview right now, we have about 115, 120 PhD students with just a very diverse population. You'll hear and meet many of the students just in the later sessions in terms of underrepresented minorities, male, female, and I think we're really extremely proud of our students. I think what's exciting is that the students really are extremely committed, not just to research and academic excellence, but a lot of them really are very strongly dedicated to outreach to service to the community. And so there's a lot of activities available here. A lot of it is organized through our BMES, Biomedical Engineering Society, Student Society, but with activities ranging really just from working with high school students, middle school. We have a Girl Scout Engineering Day. It was supposed to come up. I guess that's going to be delayed now. So there's a lot of opportunities available here. Our program so far, I think we've had about 163 students who have graduated so far. The average time to degree is a little less than 5.5 years. I'd have to say it's a fairly narrow distribution. So we have very few students who finished in substantially under 5 years. I think we had a few students who've graduated in 4 years, but that's fairly rare. But we also have very, very few students who take more than 6 years. So in that sense, I think with this, you have a very good chance within 6 years you'll be out of here. Most of the students even just are substantially less than that. And our graduation rate, I think, is over 90%. So we really try to be extremely selective when we take students, and then extremely supportive when someone is in the program, just to support them throughout the entire career. In terms of career outcomes, I was just looking at our numbers, I think earlier, just a couple of weeks ago. And so the breakdown is in terms of what career path do Cornell BME PhD students choose. About 2/3, around 60%, go into industry, and just various industry, whether it's device industry, whether it's pharma, whether it's completely different areas. About 1/3 go into academia, so currently pursuing postdoc positions or faculty positions, and about 5% follow various other paths, whether it's some of them have gone to law school, some of them are working in patent law, some of them have gone to medical school, some of them are working now in public policy. So we really do recognize that there's many different options available. And what we see as our mission is not to just in terms of push you into one career path or another, but instead just to show you different available options, and so that you can choose for yourself. First of all, recognize what options are available, and then choose what are you excited about, and then we'll work with you just to lay the foundation so that you can strengthen and kind of build your personal career development in order to work out so that you'll be competitive in that career path. I think in terms of these are just some of the recent awards. So we've been extremely successful with the NSF program, where I think last year we had, 5 students. The year before, I think we had 9 students, even though just the NSF program has become increasingly competitive as the number of NSF fellowships has been reduced. I think part of this reason for our success is that I think a lot of it really is already the students that we recruit. I think unlike some other institutions, we clearly value academic excellence, research experience, but as I mentioned before, I think a lot of our students are really excited about outreach, engagement as well, and so those are attributes that the NSF values highly as well. And with that much interest by our students, that means we have really just a large network of activities available. So it's much easier just to engage in some of these activities, and which makes it then much more believable as well when you apply for the NSF. The other strength is we have a really good mentoring program for the NSF fellowship applications. Given that we've had so many fellows on campus, all of them are willing to pay it forward as well, and then they work actively with the current BME students then, or with the just incoming students, just to help them, for example, work on their fellowship application, and so providing feedback, editing, and guidance how to prepare a strong BME fellow application. And I'll go into a little bit more of that when I talk about some of the required courses that we have in the first year. But we've also had our students recognized in various other paths, whether it's in fostering women in engineering, whether it's at the national level, whether it's at the local level, in various diversity efforts, both locally and nationally as well. We have a commercialization fellowship program in terms of that really helps and trains students in taking some of ideas from their PhD and then exploring how to start companies with that. And so we've had over the last 3 years, our students participating in that program as well. This is a very strong engagement in public policy, and really particularly in these times, promoting the value and the importance of science just to the broader community. In terms of outcomes, I think these are just a few examples in terms of really just to reflect the broad variety of what students have done and been successful. So ranging really just from typical in terms of standard academic positions at various universities, as well as to administrative positions, starting up labs, working for established companies. We've had quite a few students as well who are interested in academia, but much more in educational positions, so working at undergraduate research, at undergraduate colleges rather than at big research institutions. And so this is something that we've been very much promoting as well. So giving opportunities to these students just to engage, already get a lot of teaching practice here, working with for teaching innovations, working with other resources, just to train them in the classroom, give them opportunity to work with students. And so we've had several students who then straight out of the PhD have now started faculty positions or instructor positions at universities here, where they could immediately go to just their four-year undergraduate institutions and start teaching and working with students there. So anybody interested in that, that is something we have quite a bit of experience as well, and I'd be happy to talk more about it for just if there's specific questions. Then the research areas, I think most of you are probably well familiar from it, so I'm not going to go into too much detail there. I think we clearly have many areas of particular expertise. I think our orthopedic biomechanics is extremely strong with strong connections to the clinic. We have an extremely strong micro nanofabrication here on cancer. In cancer mechanobiology, we have a large NCI-funded center together with our medical school with a lot of collaborations. We have substantial strength in drug delivery, biomaterials. There's a rapidly growing area here in systems and synthetic biology, where we've made several hires and continue to hire students as well. And I think I think hopefully in your interactions with the individual faculty, you'll learn more about those opportunities. So again, and just to reiterate, just make sure when you look at opportunities, not only to look at the departmental faculty websites, but really at all of the faculty who are in the broader BME graduate field. So these more than 60 laboratories available. In terms of just going a little bit more into the specifics, so the timeline for us, we really believe that it takes time to find the right lab, and so we admit every student free to choose their own lab. Students have the entire first semester to pick a lab, and so in order to promote that, in the orientation, which starts a week before the beginning of the semester, we'll have a week-long orientation session. So where we have several of the faculty, almost all of the faculty looking for students, will be presenting their research to you. We'll have poster sessions by graduate students, but then we really encourage you just to spend time, look at multiple labs, and not just talking to the faculty, but spending time in the labs, talking with students in the lab, because it's one thing hearing and talking to a faculty member for 30 minutes and being excited about the research they do, but it's another thing to also make sure, does the mentoring, does the teaching style of that faculty advisor match your style? Is the lab environment, does that kind of match your expectations as well? Because clearly a PhD, 5 years, that's a big commitment. You're going to spend a lot of time in the lab, and so we'd rather have you take more time, explore multiple labs before you make your decision. And so most students, I'd say, have by around mid-October, mid-November, have kind of narrowed down their choices to just one or two labs. And so by probably around late October, mid-November, most of the students have found a lab. There's no formal matching program there, but it's once you and the faculty member says, we want to work together, then the match is made and that person becomes your advisor. We don't have a formal rotation program because we found different labs and different students have different preferences. So we really encourage students just to reach out to the faculty labs that they're interested in and discuss with them what's the best format to learn about each other. So there's several labs that do offer mini rotations on the order of about 4 or 5 weeks, where you just work maybe on a project, do that. There's other labs that maybe have you come in, shadow people, attend lab meetings. And so that's really up to you and the laboratory as well, just to decide what's the best way for you to learn about it. And I really discourage both faculty and students to rush into a decision. So if someone comes to me in early September, says, I found a lab, I usually tell them, okay, go back, look at a few other labs, just to make sure that whatever lab you choose is really the one lab that you you want to go with for the long run, and not because it's, oh, that's the shiniest object right now and you haven't had a chance just to really make a good commitment. And we found that really helps in terms of to ensure the long-term happiness, rather than someone just being extremely excited about a lab, but then a year later coming back saying, oh no, this is not really what I had hoped for. Then in the spring semester, it's just, yeah, essentially it's the preparation for the clinical immersion term. So together with your advisor, you'll be then identifying clinicians at the medical school that you'll be using as your clinical mentor for the immersion term. And I'll talk more about the immersion term in a moment. And then in the summers, really, that's when you do the 7-week immersion term at the medical school. So we provide housing, we provide a stipend, so everything is fully covered. And it typically runs from early June till, in terms of just end of July, early August. So there's still a few weeks in the summer available as well. And then you come back and then continue your research here in Ithaca. Or if you ended up joining a lab in New York City, then you would just stay in New York City. Then in the second semester, together with your advisor, you'll be identify your thesis committee members. I'll go into some of the details of that in a moment. And then afterwards is really just doing mostly research, take some classes, complete what Cornell calls the A exam, the admission to candidacy exam, which is essentially the thesis proposal, which has to be just completed within the 3rd year. So we encourage most students to take it either in the 5th semester or the 6th semester. And then students give annual work in progress presentations and meet with a committee every year, starting from about the 3rd year on. I'd say the meeting with the committee, you should start that early on, but the presentations to the BME community, those only from the 3rd semester, from the 3rd year on. And then as a typically in year 5, students take what's called here the B exam. So it's the PhD thesis. So they give a seminar and they present their work. And I think all of you probably received a hard copy of it. Otherwise, if you have any question about specific details, just we have a graduate program PhD student handbook posted online as well. And so you can either download the PDF or you can find all of the information on the website there as well. In terms of classes, what we've identified, and that's something where we've been working on quite a bit over the last few years, is really trying to see how do you get the most out of kind of being here in an academic environment with lots of opportunities, at the same time accounting for the broad flexibility and diversity in your interests. And so what we recognized is, rather than prescribing a lot of mandatory courses that try to, in terms of one size fits all, that we really want to give students and the committee the maximum flexibility to identify what works for them. So we've minimized the courses that we require, and instead really want to give you flexibility just to take classes that you think are most helpful for you. So at the same time, we wanted to make sure that there's at least some courses, particularly in the first year, that everybody takes, since we found that really helps to build quite a bit of community as well. There clearly are some aspects in your coursework or some content that will be helpful for every single student. And so what we do is, in the first semester, you just take, the only required course is just the weekly seminar that's just 1 hour a week, which is the first year biomedical engineering seminar for PhD students. And this includes, for example, training how to write fellowship applications. It includes some presentations of faculty labs looking for students. And a lot of the other time is then spent introducing you to resources available at Cornell, whether it's core facilities, whether it's career development opportunities. We work very closely with what's called the BEST program, Broadening Experiences in Science and Technology, which talks about careers outside academia. There's presentations from, for example, the Statistical Consulting Unit, and so on. So really just to show you early on already all of these opportunities that you have here. In the second year, there's only, in the second semester, so in the spring, there's only, again, one required class. This is a class that's called Core Concepts in Disease. And the idea is just to give you a little bit already an introduction to some of the more clinical work to prepare you for the immersion term, as well as teach some of your presentation skills in terms of how to learn new topics, as well as how to recognize maybe some overarching concept that you'll be encountering in a lot of medical conditions. So rather than studying one specific disease at a time, what are fundamental concepts that you find across many, many different diseases and areas? And then in the summer, it's just the only required course is really just the immersion term, so the 7 weeks. Afterwards, all we require from students in terms of coursework is to take 6 semesters of our general BME seminars. So these are weekly seminars where we have faculty coming in from all over the world to lecture on different topics, and then the work in progress research seminars by current PhD students. And we do expect that all students TA for 1 semester. It's really our strong expectation that students do not have to TA more than 1 semester, since we don't think it's just a really good experience if someone has to be, in order to support themselves to this PhD, has to TA a lot. The only cases really where we've seen students TA repeatedly have been students who are very interested in teaching, and so then we work with the students to try to identify opportunities that you can also then be much more engaged in some of the course design and take a much more active role than just as a standard TA. This is just an example of some of the things that we offer in this first year seminar for PhD students. So where you see it includes, the first few slots include some faculty presentations. Then we have several student panels, including how to find a lab for your PhD. So where you'll hear and have a chance to talk more with some of the current students. We have several sessions then dedicated to help prepare for the NSF proposals, or we try to keep it a little bit broader. So for those students not eligible for the NSF proposal or who are deciding to apply for NSF in the following year can still benefit from it. And then the rest really just introducing you to various resources available at Cornell. In terms of the immersion term, which is, I think, a very unique aspect of our program, is really the idea is twofold, or we want to get 2 things out of it. One is just to get a very broad clinical immersion experience out of it, and so really have a chance as well what happened in a clinic, what are actually some of the pressing needs that physicians have, because I think many of you, and it was definitely, I think when I was a graduate student, had a lot of research experience in a laboratory setting, to maybe work with cell culture, in vitro systems, maybe even mouse models, and doing very fundamental research, but then you're fairly far removed from the actual clinic and the patients. And we recognize there's tremendous value in actually working with the clinicians to see patients, to work on patients, just to see what are the most pressing needs for them, what are things where they think that there's a big impact. And so that's one thing I want you to recognize. The other part really just being able just there to witness a surgery, maybe see for yourself where do you think, oh, I have ideas that could make some of these scenarios better. And so the idea is for you to spend both just get a broad overview of what's happening in a hospital, but then also work with a clinical mentor to really work on clinical research projects. And as I mentioned before, we'll provide housing and stipend for it, and we'll work together with you and your clinical mentor, your PhD advisor, to find a clinical mentor. Then the thesis committee, so this is at Cornell, it's called the special committee, consists of a minimum of...
I'm on the Cornell thing.
Was that a question?
For you.
So then the special committee consists of just a minimum of 3 faculty members. One of them is your thesis advisor, who's the chair of the committee, and he or she must be a BME graduate field member or become one. So we often have it if students identify maybe a faculty member who's not a field member yet, they can already serve as a chair, and so that's not an issue. The other 2 members are your minor members, where one of them represents a non-BME engineering discipline, for example, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, chemical engineering. And the idea is just to make sure that you really have sufficient depth in engineering. And the other member is a minor member in life science, could be biology, could be chemistry, physics. And again, we want to make sure that you get a foundation that is just broad enough, recognizing that likely 5-6 years after your PhD, you may not be working anywhere close to what you did specifically for a PhD project, but instead you want to develop really just a solid foundation that you're well equipped for whatever career path you want to choose. If you want to have additional committee members, you can add those as well. Generally, we recommend it's best to keep the committee fairly small based on scheduling, based on getting advice, but that really is up to you. And again, the committee has to be selected by the end of the spring semester, but you can still update your committee during the course of the PhD. And I think just to conclude with maybe what do I see as some of our strengths in terms of what we have. I think research, I think we clearly are an excellent environment. As I mentioned, about particular micro nanofabrication, imaging, two-photon imaging was developed or invented here at Cornell, mechanobiology, neurotech, synthetic biology, a lot of the cancer research. But at the same time, I think a lot of other universities you're applying to, I think they'll also offer excellent research experiences. So clearly, I think you want to find a program where you have multiple labs that would be of interest to you. I think what makes us pretty unique is really that we have extremely accessible but also extremely collaborative faculty where everybody really does that, works with everybody. People are extremely open if someone has developed a technique in one lab, introducing other labs, training them to do it, and that really goes across all levels. We've recently just whether it's people just who are in the National Academy, who are Howard Hughes investigators, we've just reached out to some lab where they ask them, oh, you invented this new RNA sequencing or transcriptomic technique, can we test it for our system? So just come on over, have coffee, we'll train your student how to do it, and without any questions about, oh, where we'll be on the publication, will we be getting any money for it, but really just, let's try, do some fun science. We've been approached in my lab by labs anywhere from plant entomology to other disciplines as to see, oh, we study mechanobiology, can we apply this to other systems? And I think that really is, I think, the joy of just having lots of people who are just excited about science and engineering and trying to make the world a better place, working together without, in terms of being selfishly absorbed on what they want to do. We provide lots of time and flexibility in selecting the advisor. Again, I see really this as a major key to success, that you don't want to be locked into a particular lab too soon until you really had a chance to identify for yourself, is this a good fit for you? Immersion term is very unique to us, and then just the extensive flexibility in the choice of courses and your committee members. And then we do not have a qualifying exam. We've at some point considered it, but then recognized really there's no point in making people study for an exam just for the sake of studying for the exam, and instead, again, working with you just to identify what is best for your career development. And then I think the last items really, I think it's what you'll, I think, hopefully see and learn more about, I think, now in the next few hours, in the coming days. I think it's really our student community. I think students here have really found, I think, an amazing way just to find a balance between doing excellent research, but also still being, in terms of just, people with a balanced life, enjoying life, helping others as well, not being only focused on themselves, as I mentioned, even though I think all of our students were busy last night until the end of the day, just shutting down labs and taking care of their research. All of them just are now volunteers, and of course they're happy to step up, serve on panels. And I think that's really, I think, the spirit here, which I think for me as a faculty member is always the biggest joy, just working with the students, see how engaged they are, not only in research, but also just teaching and outreach, in just helping others as well. Other aspects, I think, that are big strengths is that I think the affordability, quality of life. I think anybody who's been here to the area, I think you have tons of hiking trails, state parks, opportunities just to really just enjoy life outside. Rent is particularly just there compared to, I think, a lot of the coastal places, still quite affordable as well. I think your stipend here actually does go a long way. You can actually save money instead of just seeing how to find money to support yourself. With that, I think I'd say just I really encourage you to reach out to the other students, and I'm happy to take any questions. Any questions that I can answer?
I'm sorry, I might have missed it, but you mentioned that Cornell does not have qualifying exam, but you also mentioned exam A. Like, what's exam A?
So exam A, that's just a thesis proposal. So that's where you present to your thesis committee what your plans for the research are. So it's really just based solely on the research that you're going to do.
Okay, thank you.
I might just add, sorry, I had my video off from the The A exam is also, it's with your special committee, whereas in the departments that have a qualifying exam, the qualifying exam is often the whole faculty of the department, but the A exam is only with your special committee. So that helps, that guarantees the research focus, so to speak, because it's the research committee that's guiding you, that's giving the exam.
That's an excellent point. And then I think I just saw a question here someone asked in terms of where the funding comes from. So the way it typically works is, so all of you in your offer letter, you've been guaranteed funding for, I think officially it says 5 years, but realistically it's until the end of your PhD, assuming you make good progress. It's the way in terms of the finer details work is that during the first semester, the department will provide the funding, and then afterwards, then you will typically be supported by the PIs in whose lab you work. But then there is, of course, some support coming from TA-ships as well from the one semester that you TA. There's some fellowships available. I think we've been, in addition to any fellowships that you've applied for, we've been nominating several of you as well for available internal fellowships, and we'll be reaching out to you. I think we were able to get quite a few of those. I think those notifications will come out in the coming days as well. And so those internal fellowships often provide funding for anywhere between 1 year to 3 years of funding. And what it means is the biggest advantage is it gives you the financial flexibility that you come with financial support in terms of finding labs. You have a lot of opportunities for maybe labs that wouldn't necessarily have immediate funding available. If you want to work in those labs and you come with one of those fellowships, you could get a head start there as well. Any remaining questions?
I had another question. I might have showed up a little bit late, but did you talk about how many times the students have to TA each for their whole PhD experience?
So we require 1 semester of TAing, and we really try to keep it to that 1 semester. So I think the only exceptions is I think the most common I've seen is if students are interested in teaching and they want to TA more, and then we have some students who TA then 2 or 3 semesters, but then making sure as well that it's not just TAing, but they can become more involved in the course design. And the only other case I've seen is if a lab has maybe hit a brief financial crisis where there's a short funding gap and that has to be overcome, where then the student might TA in order to make sure that they have funding there. But we really stress it to the faculty as well that they should only take students if they have support available for it, because we don't see it really as a good model for students just having to TA through the entire PhD, because TAing is a big time commitment that takes away from research. And so we want to make sure that students have time just to focus on the research without having to TA.
All right, thank you.
I have a question regarding the stipend. Our offer letter, it says our stipend will be like at least 36,000, something like that. I'm wondering, it says at least, so it's not an exact number. Like, what determine the exact number of the stipend?
It's part of it. I think when the letters were coming out, I think some of the numbers were still being finalized. The other thing is that, for example, some of these internal fellowships that we are applying for, they come with slightly higher fellowships and so with slightly higher stipends. And so if you receive one of those fellowships, then the stipend will be slightly higher.
Okay. Also, if we get an external scholarship, would that be just supplement to our regular scholarship, or like some amount be added on to that?
So it will be, so if the fellowship that you receive, the external fellowship, is below what our stipend level is, then we will complement it to the graduate school, will top it off just to reach the Cornell level as well. And so we do encourage everybody just to accept external fellowship letters. If the fellowship...
The key thing, it replaces is the key thing.
It replaces, yeah. So it does not go on top of it.
Okay, thank you.
I see just there with the TA-ship. So it's usually the TA-ship is a BME class. In most cases, it is an undergraduate class for our BME major. There's a few classes, larger classes, graduate level classes that we use BME PhD TAs for as well. And we usually work together in terms of with the advisor just to see what would be a good match for the student. At the same time, since most of them undergraduate classes, it should not be that hard in terms of research content-wise, just to be ready for them, or just the content of the classes just to be ready to TA them. But we do want to make sure that there's a good fit so that you feel comfortable with whatever class you have to TA.
Is it possible that we could TA like a math course or computer science if that's like what our undergrad backgrounds is in?
I think we've looked at the situation as well. So I think if that's something where you say, oh, I don't feel comfortable with these BME courses, it's maybe another opportunity we would work with you just to find a solution there. But then some of the BME courses are fairly math heavy as well. So there may be some where you'd actually feel quite comfortable with in terms of with your background.
I would add also it's difficult for non-engineering courses because of how the university is structured. And so, math often uses their teaching assistants to fund their students. And so they TA more often in some departments. And so because we're in a different model, sometimes going across departments is difficult, and especially across colleges. And so I think that like chemistry or math would be difficult because it's not an engineering college, So I think there's some differences there also.
I see in terms of just some question in terms of just classes for the first semester. So it varies how many courses students take in the first semester. I'd say the most common ones is probably 2 or 3 classes that students take in addition to this 1 credit seminar with the DGS. It depends. There are some students that prefer to have more time available just to explore research opportunities, and so they don't want to take too many courses. Other students that, I'd rather take a lot of courses in my first year to have more time available. So I think that's really up to each student to decide. It might be worth discussing that with some of the current BME PhD students as well, just to hear their opinion on it. In terms of which courses to pick, that is, since at that point you don't have a committee advisor yet, it's really completely up to you just to decide what is most useful, what are you most excited about. As a starting point, in the BME PhD student handbook, we put a list of classes that were just collected and put together based on feedback from students and faculty that they thought were helpful classes that they really enjoyed, that they thought other students might enjoy as well. That list is clearly not exhaustive, so I think I would look through that maybe as a starting point, see other classes that you'd be excited about, and then you want to check are they being offered in the spring of that semester. But again, if you find a different course that's not listed there, don't let that stop you. You can take any of the Cornell courses. And so there's also, I think in the FAQs on the website, I alluded to that. There's, for example, there's an entrepreneurial minor, there's a stem cell minor, so there's different programs as well that then offer classes, and you can participate in those programs as well and take those classes. As I think you'll probably hear from the student, there's a wine class that's offered by the hotel school that's very popular as well among, I guess, both undergraduate students and graduate students. Some graduate students take PE classes, education classes, and that's fine as well. Let's see, class size, I think that varies quite a bit. I'd say most of our classes, graduate classes, are probably on the order of about 15 to 30 students. Undergraduate students, anywhere, I'd say 20, 50 students. But of course, there's some classes that can be substantially larger as well. And then in terms of publications, how many papers do students generally publish? I think it varies probably quite a bit between the particular research area. For example, someone working on animal models, in vivo work, or even just their cell culture will probably take quite a bit longer than someone who works maybe on more theoretical work. There's no required number of papers to publish in order graduates, and we find, first of all, it varies so much by discipline, but these days with so many different journals as well, it's really just, it doesn't make much sense to require a certain number. You can publish for almost anything you find. Some journal, you can publish it. At the same time, you might be working for 5 years on one big project, get one paper out of it at the end, and have that there. And so that's really, the power lies then is in you and your thesis committee. So if your thesis committee thinks you have done enough, you graduate. If they think, oh, maybe you should do more, then it might be time to do more. That's why it's good kind of just to pick your committee as well, just to see, okay, are you kind of have good agreement with them? Do they seem reasonable? And I should point out, they are also the ones in terms of courses, so they work with you to support you, but also decide how many courses do you need to take, for example. So, and again, we recognize that this is something very individually different. So if you pick as your minor, for example, biology, someone in the biology field, if your background, you've already taken 5 biology courses as an undergraduate student, then they might maybe just take 1 graduate level course and then you're really done with satisfying this minor. If you have not taken any bio courses, but you want in terms of have your minor member in biology, they might recommend maybe start off with an advanced undergraduate course in biology and then take 1 or 2 graduate level courses just to get you up to speed there. And again, that's, I think, it's a nice part that can really be customized to be what fits best for you and your plans, rather than just to provide just that one blanket solution that has to cover everybody. Let's see, credits. I think the credits technically has a number of credits that everybody has, but that always gets in terms of added up by just adding research credits to it. In that sense, you don't have to worry. There's no minimum numbers of courses that you can take. So some students, particularly in later years, may not take any courses, then all the credit is for research. Other students might take 2 or 3 courses and do research. I'd say probably most students in maybe the first year take about 2 or 3 courses per semester, and then that drops relatively quickly 0 to 1 courses per semester, where I would encourage you just to even later on in your PhD consider taking classes, maybe just 1 class every other semester. So but kind of potentially waiting with that just to see, well, what works best for your PhD, because in your first year, you may not know yet what classes will be most helpful either for your PhD project or for your career development. So some of those things I think that you might only recognize in year 2 or year 3 of your PhD, where you think, oh, this class would really be helpful for me. And so then just you have the flexibility to take those classes as well. Any other questions? Okay.